Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? I hope y'all are well. What's today? Today's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you. I hope you guys are doing all right. Yes, I'm off that energy drink. Y'all know I stay drinking energy drinks. I know it's a problem. I know I got to do better, but I love energy drinks. But anyway, what's up, y'all? I hope y'all are well. Listen, I have some new equipment. So let me know if you can hear me because I have a new mic. I have a new camera. So I know that you guys can see me. But let me know if you guys can hear me because I want to make sure that I set everything up correctly and I'm coming through clearly on the microphone. So listen. I don't like making y'all wait. I like to jump right into our conversation and start taking the journey without y'all having to wait. And so I'm going to do just that. I by God's grace will ask and seek to answer this question. Can studying Black church history help us to understand how to, quote unquote, do church today? And I see you saying clear. My brother, Chris Samuels, is here. God bless you, Chris. Love you so much. I see Auntie Millicent. God bless you so much. So that's the question I'm going to seek to answer. Can studying Black church history, can knowing Black church history help us to understand how to, quote unquote, do church today? That's the discussion. Now, I want to start this discussion by telling you a little bit of a story and being transparent and sharing a little bit of my background. All right. So I planted a church in Atlanta in 2009. Okay. And when I planted this church, I was 28 years old. So I was young. I was motivated. I was energetic. I was earnest. But let me tell y'all, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had all this zeal. I had all this energy and excitement around the project, but I had no clue what I was doing. So when I planted the church, of course, I wanted the church to grow. Of course, I wanted butts in the seats. Of course, I wanted the church to have an impact. But my approach, because I was 28 and because I hadn't really studied and because I didn't really know too much, my approach was, well, let's do whatever we need to do to get butts in the seats. As long as it's moral, legal, and ethical, whatever we need to do to grow and to get people in church is what we're going to do. And sorry, y'all, I got a brand new camera. I'm noticing that my camera is flashing in and out. I think it's because at times it overheats, but we're going to get there. So my approach to growing my first church was very pragmatic. Whatever works is what I'm going to do. Now, that church that I planted in 2009 is no longer in existence today. It is no longer in existence today. It's gone. It's out of business. And great people went to that church. We had a lot of fun. The Lord met us at the church as well. But the reason why the church no longer exists is because the church was built upon a very shoddy, very faulty foundation. Again, I was a young, idealistic, zealous kid, didn't know what I was doing. And so the church is no longer in existence. And after that church failed this was probably around 2011. Of course, I was dejected and I was sad, and I was frustrated with God, and my desire was ultimately to pastor again. Right, that was my desire. Right, I ultimately wanted to try again, but by God's grace, as I was considering, contemplating, doing this all over again and taking another strike at it, by God's grace, I stumbled upon a sermon by a guy named Paul Washer. Now, some of you guys may be familiar with Paul Washer. Some of you guys may know who Paul Washer is. Some of you guys may be fans of Paul Washer. Some of you guys may not be fans of Paul Washer. I don't know. I'm just giving you my story as I attempt to answer this question: can studying Black church history help us to learn how to do church today? So I stumbled upon this sermon by Paul Washer as I was contemplating launching out and planting the church again. And there was a particular portion of the sermon that rocked me to my core. And I want to share that portion of the sermon with you now. So check this out.
Do you see that, brethren? I'm going to give you a harsh illustration. Imagine, and I've given this so many places, but it's so important. I want to communicate this truth to you. Imagine that a great king is going to go on a long journey, and he calls you as the steward to care for his bride that he loves more than everything, more than his kingdom. And he gives you a list, a kingly decree. This is what you're supposed to do with my bride. This is it. You do not add to this list. You do not take away from this list. This is the list. And the king looks at you with fire in his eyes, because this is my bride. I use illustration that oftentimes I would go into red zones in different places in Peru where the terrorists were supposedly in control, or the military was kind of dangerous, or things were going on. And my wife would want to go with me, and I would say, no, you're not going. Why? They pull me off the bus, push me around, do all kinds of things with me. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. No big deal. One of those men lay a finger on my bride. It changes everything. That's my bride. That's my bride. So I would tell her, I don't want to get you in trouble, and I don't want to get me killed. And if I, being evil, could love my wife so that I would fight men, what kind of passion does Christ have for his bride? And so listen, preacher, this applies to missionaries, applies to all of us. So this king, has always delighted in his bride. Oh, she's beautiful, but she's simple. No painted eyes. No need for rouge. A simple white, long, flowing, elegant dress that he gave her. And then he goes on a journey. But as he goes on that journey, he stays longer than everyone supposes. And you, as a wise steward, begin to realize that, well, the people are no longer interested in the king, because they're no longer interested in his bride. She's old-fashioned. And so you drop a plan, and some of you have drawn up this plan. And some who will hear me through video have drawn up this plan. So you decide. You're going to change her dress. You're going to paint her face. You're going to restyle her hair. And you're going to march her before a bunch of carnal men like a prostitute in order to use her to draw them back to the King. And that's exactly what these church growth people are doing. This is exactly what's going on in America, and it's going on in the mission field, and it is wrong. And I want you to know, on the day of judgment, do not fear for the atheist. Fear for the pastor and the missionary who decided that he must change the look of the bride of Christ in order to make her attractive to carnal men, to bring those carnal men back home. Fear, fear, fear. It should be a daily exercise. Oh Lord, increase my fear of thee. You should look out from that pulpit at that bride of Christ that you're pastoring, that you're teaching, and realize these people, they belong to him. I will teach them only what the King has told me to teach. I will not add a word to it. I will not take a word away from it.
So that's what I heard. That's what I heard. And y'all, it rocked me. So for those of you listening, thinking that, you know, us quote unquote pro-black people can't learn or can't be impacted by white people, and you think that we think that white people have nothing to say to us, I want to tell you firsthand that clip right there stopped me in my tracks. Because I realized that I had never, ever paused to think about, like, the nature of the church. I never really stopped and asked the question. Before I planted my first church, I never really stopped and asked the question, what is the church? What is it? What is its nature? What is its essence? And because I never stopped and asked that question, pragmatism reigned. And I just did whatever I thought I needed to do to get people in the seats. And that's one of the main reasons why the church is no longer in existence today. So I subsequently discovered an entire field of theological study called ecclesiology. Ecclesiology. And this ecclesiology is the study of the church, where the goal of ecclesiology is to answer questions like, what is the church? What is it ontologically? What is it called to do on this earth? What should it be according to the scriptures? And I really dove into this discipline. I really leaned into this thing called ecclesiology to gain a better, broader, and more biblical understanding of the essence of the church, the nature of the church, and to be able to answer the question, what is the church? Okay. So I need to start there. This conversation begins with answering the question, what is the church? What is it? And only after answering that question can one then ask, what should the church be doing? Okay. Now, what Washer is not addressing in his sermon clip is this thing called contextualization. Contextualization. I'm sure Washer would admit, even though he said what he said, I'm sure he would admit that a shepherd, that a pastor, cannot pastor people in South LA the same way he would pastor people in Calabasas. A pastor cannot pastor people the same way in an affluent community as he would in a socioeconomically challenged community. This is called contextualization. So after you grapple with sort of the overarching question, what is the church? Then you need to ask and answer this question. How do I minister effectively within the context God has placed me? Now that I have a working understanding, a biblical understanding of what the church is, its essence. Now, how do I ensure that I am contextualizing ministry in such a way where I am considering the lived realities and the existential realities of the people that I pastor? So this is the second step. Broad ecclesiology. But that broad ecclesiology must then be contextualized to whatever audience that God has allowed you to pastor. And this is where we get messed up. This is where we get, my brother, BK Apologist is here. God bless you, my brother. God bless you. God bless you. This is where we tend to get messed up. All right. And y'all, let me step back and say, as a boy from Pasadena, all right, and those of you guys that are from Southern California, those of you guys that know what occurs in Southern California, as a boy from Pasadena, it's hard to say those initials, BK. Okay, it's hard for me to do that. Hard for me to say those initials. But guess what? I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord now. All right. So those initials don't mean the same thing today as they would have had I heard them when I was a young boy growing up in Pasadena. So I can say BK Apologist and say it with a smile on my face, because I know what he means by it. He means Brooklyn. He don't mean what it means in LA. So Brooklyn, that's Brooklyn Apologist. All right, let me get back on track. Where we tend to miss it is when it comes to this thing called contextual ecclesiology. And how do we miss it? How do we miss it? Because when it comes to this thing called contextual ecclesiology, we tend to allow pragmatism to prevail again. So a lot of us, in answering the question, how do I minister, particularly to the people that God has blessed me and allowed me to minister to? Oftentimes, we answer that question pragmatically. Well, what's working? Right? There's an article written by an organization called Reach Right. Reach Right is a church growth organization. It's a church growth strategist platform where they offer advice to pastors about growing their church and implementing things to assist and aid in growth. And Reach Right, which is a large organization, you can Google it. They have a pretty significant virtual platform. Their prescription to the pastor is essentially look at the largest churches in America and just copy what they're doing. Right? So their prescription is, pastors, right? Study the lay of the land and identify the biggest churches in the country and then just mimic them, adopt their models. But I want to show you why This advice is highly problematic, particularly for Black pastors and pastors of Black congregations. Let me see if I can share my screen for just a second. Let me see if I can share my screen because I want to show you this. I want to show you this. Let me see if I can share my screen for just a second. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. I think you guys are seeing this. I think you guys are seeing this. So this was produced by Outreach100.com. Outreach100.com. Okay. 2024 largest participating churches. Then it asks the question, it says, the shape of the American megachurch is constantly shifting. What are the churches at the forefront of the movement? And how are they innovating? Okay. So this is a project of Lifeway research. Now, remember, we are thinking through the prescription from Reach Right to simply examine what the largest churches in the country are doing and just essentially rip it off, right? Mimic it. And so now we're looking at this article by Outreach 100 regarding the 2024 largest participating churches. So now let's have a glance at the largest churches in America. Life Church, number 1. Church of the Highlands. Christ Church of the Valley. This is as of 2024. Lakewood Church. North Point Ministries. Christ Fellowship Church. Saddleback Church. Gateway Church. Crossroads Church. Legacy Church. Eaglebrook Church. Southeast Christian Church. Fellowship Church. Central Church. Bayside Church. Harvest Christian Fellowship. Second Baptist Church. Prestonwood Baptist Church. The Church of 1122. And rounding it out at number 20 is Lake Point Church. Now, what do you notice as you look through this list? What do you notice? What do you notice? Not a face of color on the list. This does not mean that we can't glean things from them. This does not mean that we can't learn from them. What it means is when it comes to contextual ecclesiology, it's going to be hard to mimic what they're doing, because if you're a pastor of a Black church, you are in a dissimilar context. Doesn't mean that some things won't carry over. Doesn't mean that some things won't be insightful. But if you just take everything they're doing wholesale and try to shoehorn it into the Black church context, well, you're potentially doing violence to the Constitution and the makeup of your unique context. Again, let me be clear. I'm not saying don't listen to none of those guys. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is do not have a completely assimilationist mindset as you are reviewing their practices, their protocol, their procedures, and thinking about what you need to do within your congregation, Pastor. Remember, you have been called by God to pastor who you pastor. And the people that you pastor are not incidental to your mission at that congregation. And so here's what I would suggest. Now let me step back. Because some of you guys may be saying, well, okay, all right, cool. So you've convinced me a little bit regarding not following the advice of Reach Right and looking at the largest churches in America to develop a contextualized ecclesiological construct. Okay, so you've helped me to steer clear of that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the top 20 largest Black churches, and I'm going to model my church after theirs. That's not the solution. That's not the solution. And here's why. Because many of those churches are mimicking the top 20 churches that we just saw. Okay. So you will be indirectly still mimicking those top 20 churches, because unfortunately a lot of the largest Black churches are also mimicking those other churches that we just looked at on that list. And again, y'all, hear me, please hear me. I am not saying that we can't learn and glean from them. But what I am saying is that we have to be cognizant of who we're called to pastor. And the impulse, the desire to grow wide should not trump the responsibility to minister to the people who sit in front of us, who the people we minister to should be a motivating force behind what we're doing in our congregations. And so along with examining the top 20 largest churches, along with listening to the wisdom of Reach Right and Outreach 100 and other church growth strategists, I'm not saying throw all that away. You also need, particularly if you're a Black pastor, a Black church, you also need to study Black church history. Why? Because as you study Black church history, you begin to see like this thread that is woven throughout like the entire witness of the institution. Now, let me say this. The Black church is by no means monolithic. You can have 5 Black churches on the same block, and they'll be vastly different. But here's what's interesting. And I think this is divine. I think this is actually the fingerprint of God, the signature of God upon this institution. When you study the history of the Black church, it doesn't matter what tradition it is. It doesn't matter what tradition it is. It doesn't matter what denomination it is. There seems to be a consistent, I see my sister Warrior Woman out there. Hey, let me add you as let me add you as a moderator, my dear sister. Why is it saying remove? Oh, I think you already are a moderator. It's saying, yeah, okay. You are a managing moderator. My dear sister Warrior Woman, you are. So wonderful. Okay, that's already locked down. Now I lost my train of thought. Lord Jesus. I know. When you study the history of the Black church, you begin to see this consistent thread. These you see these what I call in my second book, connection points. Regardless of the denomination or the tradition, there are these connection points that unite this institution in a very amazing, remarkable, and dare I say, divine way. There are vast differences amongst the traditions, denominations within this institution commonly referred to as the Black church. But yet when you study Black church history, you begin to see what I call identity takeaways. Consistently sort of revealed, accepted throughout the sort of entirety of the institution. And the reason why I say that is divine is because think about this. You got 7 people in the same room and ask them to talk about various topics and issues. You would hardly get those people to agree on anything. So anytime you have this type of agreement and you have this type of consistent witness amongst the various denominations, amongst the historical traditions within the Black church, you got to stop and you got to say, whoa, that sounds like DNA. So listen, I want to share with you some of the identity takeaways you glean from studying Black church history that will help us as Black pastors to Black congregations, will help us. And listen, let me pause. This is not just for Black pastors, actually. Let me clarify this. If you are listening and you're not a Black pastor, what I'm about to tell you, what I'm about to share with you is beneficial for all congregations. I would honestly say that one of the biggest mistakes of broader evangelicalism is marginalizing the witness of the Black church, turning a blind eye to the legacy and witness of the Black church. I believe that broader evangelicalism would be in a much better place today if it sought to really understand and even implement some of the wisdom of the Black church. So what I'm about to say to you is not just exclusive to Black pastors and Black churches. This is actually helpful for all pastors, all churches. We're talking about, quote unquote, doing church within all contexts. So there are what I call 5 identity takeaways that you glean when you study the history of the Black church. And these identity takeaways can be developed into a contextualized ecclesiological construct for Black churches and all churches. So let me give you, and y'all, I am actually referring to the second book that I wrote. So all of this, if you want to study this exhaustively, all of this is in the second book that I wrote entitled Risks We Must Take. Okay. So I elaborate upon this because y'all, I'm actually about to end this live because we're almost at an hour and I don't want to keep y'all too long. But if you want an exhaustive elaboration of this conversation, then you need to pick this up. But let me walk through these 5 things, these 5 identity takeaways that can help us to do church today. Ready? So here's the first one. Here's an identity takeaway. The Black church is an agent of liberation and advocacy. Servant of Christ, hello, good to see you. Let me state that again. The Black church is an agent of liberation and advocacy. Scholar Dr. James Evans, this is what he wrote. He says, liberation has been central to the African-American church's self-understanding since its inception. This liberation, however, is not just the missiological thrust of the church. It is the essence of the church's identity. Liberation is not just what the church does. It is what the church is. If human liberation is seen as central to the life of the church, then to lose sight of that center is to relinquish its claim to be the church. So that's an identity takeaway. And so how can that inform us on how to do church? Question, how are you doing justice? And how are you inspiring and motivating your congregants to do justice? What ministries, events, ideas are you developing to see that your congregation is partnering with the Spirit of God in ensuring that people are enfranchised, injustice is addressed? Like, we're talking about the link between Black church history and doing church today. Here's something that you must ask in light of this identity takeaway. How is your church being an agent of liberation to those within the congregation and in your community? So that's number one. Okay. That's number one. Number two. All right. Number two, ready? Here's the second identity takeaway. The Black church is a miraculously and supernaturally inclined institution. So briefly, let me just say that the existence of the Black church today is a miracle. Look at what this country did to our precious Indigenous brothers and sisters. As you drive throughout this country, there was once like the only people that are really truly native to this country. I see my brother, Reverend Donald Clay. That's my friend and brother all the way from, well, he's from the Jordan Downs and Watts, but he lives in Las Vegas. I love you, my brother. As you drive throughout this country, it's amazing because you don't see Indigenous houses of worship. You don't see Indigenous centers of spirituality. All of that is relegated to their reservations. Why? Is it because our Indigenous brothers and sisters aren't brilliant and beautiful and strong and powerful? No. It's because this government systematically and brutally and dare I say effectively eradicated, I'm not going to say completely eradicated, but relegated their religious witness to these relatively small portions of land called reservations. And that's sad. We ought to lament that this occurred. This ought to be something that we think about, not just every quote unquote Christopher Columbus holiday, not just on Thanksgiving. We ought to think about what this government did to our Indigenous brothers and sisters regularly. JM, good to see you. However, the only reason why I bring this up is because we don't see this same reality when it comes to the Black church and Black congregations. The same boot of white supremacy that sought to squash and eradicate the witness and existence of Indigenous brothers and sisters is the same boot that attempted to squash and eliminate and eradicate the Black church. But she exists today. And even in some ways, she thrives today. That is a miracle. Black people can't take credit for that. Yes, we're brilliant. Yes. We've used our ingenuity and all, but this is why I say that the existence of the Black church today is a striking, apologetic for the existence of the Christian God. So let me just say that when I say that the Black church is a miraculously and supernaturally inclined institution, that's one reason why I say that, because the existence. I told you I just got a new camera, and my new camera. I guess there we go. Look at that. Look at my new camera using hand signals to zoom in and zoom out. Reverend Clay, I done moved on up like the Jeffersons with my equipment. Look at that. All right. Okay. So that's one reason why I say that the Black church is a miraculous and supernaturally inclined institution. The second reason why I say this is because when enslaved people came to Christ and converted to Christianity, they came to Christ just as they were. They implored, and they asked God earnestly to remove their sins. And he did. He washed their sins away. Oh, happy day. But they did not ask God to remove their culture. And that is beautiful as well. They were in a new country, a new place. Some of them embraced a new faith. And while they cried out to God to remove their sins, they did not see the need to assimilate into the broader culture. They said, look, if we gonna be Christians, we gonna bring our African remembrance to the faith. If we're going to be Christians, we're going to bring some soul to this thing. And so listen to this quote here. This is from, let's see. This is from a book called, a book written by Dr. L.H. Welchel called The History and Heritage of African American Churches. This is what he writes. Listen to this. Prior to the spiritual fervor of the Great Awakening, African Americans characterized American Christianity as dull, spiritless, hypocritical, and generally unappealing. The spiritual fervor that accompanied the Great Awakening has visible elements that resonated with African religious expression, elements that appeared less frequently in more formal, catechetical styles of religious transformation. The spirited shouting, singing, dancing, Holy Ghost possessions that were present in many camp meetings during the Great Awakening were outgrowths of African American spirituality. Why do I bring that up? Because we're talking about how to do church, right? And what we can glean from Black church history to inform us on how to do church today. Listen, if you are prohibiting and preventing your people from shouting and expressing emotion over the good news. Listen, I'm not, no condemnation, but that's not the way that Black churches should do church. The history of the Black church teaches us that it's all right to bring your culture to the cross. It's all right to bring your shout to the service. It's all right. I'm about to preach now. Y'all hear my preacher voice. I'm tuning it up. It's all right to bring your dance to the house of worship. We're talking about doing church, right? Doing church in light of this historical witness doesn't mean being disorganized, doesn't mean having this sort of lackadaisical approach. And I see my brother, Pastor Kwame Crosby, my friend and my brother. So it doesn't mean lacking self-control, but what it does mean is, look, we like seasoning in our chicken, and we like seasoning in our worship. We like seasoning in our singing. We like, look, what did the old saints used to say? I don't like a religion that I can't feel. And so, like, when it comes to doing church, let the people emote. Let the people express their exuberance and their love for God. Let the people sing, shout, dance. Now, again, I'm not for chaos, but I am for cultural remembrance being brought into our sacred spaces. All right. So that's the second one. Second takeaway from Black church history. I only got 3 more to go, and then we out of. Actually, no. I'm gonna open it up for questions. So I got 3 more to go. I'm gonna open it up for questions, and then we out of here. Now, this one that I'm about to give you is related to the last one, loosely related. So here's the third identity takeaway that you come away with as you study the history of the Black church. The Black church is an essential source of psychological recovery for Black people. And if you are not a pastor of a Black church, you can replace the word Black with hurting people, marginalized people, outcasted people. Okay. The Black church is an essential. So I see, listen, Sean Dade is in the building. Y'all want to know who Sean Dade is? Sean Dade was my youth pastor. I was licensed under Sean Dade. So salute to one of my spiritual fathers, Reverend Sean Dade, who's in here right now. Love you, Lonnie. Love you so much. Let me read an account. So listen to me. A formerly enslaved man named Peter Randolph recorded the description of the activities that occurred in a secret worship service attended by enslaved people. He also recorded the general mood felt by the worshipers at the culmination of the meeting. Listen to this. This is what was going on in the clandestine worship services of the enslaved. They first ask each other how they feel, the state of their minds, etc. Then praying and singing all around until they generally feel happy. The slave forgets all his sufferings except to remind others of the trials during the past week. Thank God, this is testimony service. Thank God, I shall not live here always. Then they pass from one another, shaking hands and bidding each other farewell. As they separate, they sing a parting hymn of praise. Notice how psychological repair is an intentional part of the service. Why? because these people spent the majority of their lives toiling in the hot sun, being forced without wages to work in the harshest conditions. No freedom, no rights, no opportunities. This was their daily existence. And so you better believe when they got the opportunity to steal away and worship God, they were also going to be concerned with the psychological state of the community. What is this a reflection of? A reflection of loving God with the mind. I got to forget that this camera, okay, there we go. Look at that, y'all. I can't be so demonstrative with my hand gestures because this is a new camera. This camera that I got takes my hand gestures and zooms in and zooms out based upon them. So I got to remember that. Psychological repair. So we're talking about doing church, right? How can we use this identity takeaway from the history and legacy of the Black church to do church today? What are you doing? Intentionally doing for your people to help them psychologically, particularly in Black churches. Because listen, we may not be under the slave master's gaze any longer as it pertains to 17th, 18th, 19th century chattel slavery. But Black people are still marginalized and oppressed in this country. Only the blindest people deny that reality. Black people still possess what W.E.B. Du Bois famously called double consciousness, where when we're out within society, we have to think with two minds. A mind that is more assimilated into majority culture and a mind that is still thoroughly Black. And so when we come into our sacred spaces, that is the one place where we can be our full selves and where we can be poured into in such a way that we receive what we need to receive psychologically to go back out and face a hostile society all over again. Y'all, what are you doing to promote psychological repair within your community, within your faith communities? If you are a pastor of a Black church, or if you are a pastor of a marginalized community, then how are you prioritizing this? Let me read this to you. This is from, actually, let me read this to you. It says, some experts in the field of Black church studies call this nurturing practices. The worshiping community engages in key nurturing practices. These practices include laying before God the tough burdens of life, concerns, and desires for the present and future, expressing deep emotion and lament connected with personal and communal plight and possibility, and reframing and affirming a positive Black identity that counters the negative one found in larger society. Or to use Homer Ashby's words, they affirm one another in the belief that they are indeed a part of God's good creation. Whatever the world may say Monday through Saturday, the church delivers God's good news that Black people are a people of worth and value. Psychological recovery, psychological repair. All right. I think I only got two more, y'all. I know, y'all pray for me because I'm so long-winded and I'm trying to grow my channel. And the conventional wisdom is be concise. Don't be on here longer than 30 minutes. Don't be on here longer. Y'all pray for me. I'm trying. I'm a Baptist preacher. I'm long-winded, y'all. Pray for me. But I think I only got two more to go. And then I'm going to open it up for some questions. All right. All right. Here's the next one. The Black church is a destination for truth and theological discernment. So when you study the history, legacy of the Black church, this is an identity takeaway. This is something that you walk away with. Let me read this. Listen to how perceptive and how theologically astute enslaved people were. This narrative that enslaved people were just dumb and ignorant and they just went along with whatever the white man wanted. They just went along with whatever their overseers wanted, and they are just easily duped and easily bamboozled. Y'all, that honestly, that's like perpetuating white supremacist narratives of Black people. Our ancestors were extremely perceptive, extremely astute. And let me prove it. Slaves distinguished the hypocritical religion of their masters from true Christianity. And they rejected the slaveholder's gospel of obedience to master and mistress. Ex-slave Douglas Dorsey reported that after the minister of his plantation admonished slaves to honor their masters whom they could see as they would God, whom they could not see, the driver's wife, who could read and write a little, would say to the ministers, would say, this is, so let me start over. The driver's wife, who could read and write a little, would say the minister's sermon was all lies. Lunsford Lane recounted an incident when a kind-hearted clergyman who was very popular with the colored people made a mistake of preaching a sermon to us in which he argued from the Bible that it was the will of heaven from all eternity that we should be slaves and our masters be our owners. Many of us left him. Do you see how perceptive they were? Do you see how astute they were? Do you see how they were thinking theologically in the midst of false teaching, in the midst of teaching that was opposed to proper teaching regarding the Imago Dei, in the midst of teaching that ran counter to the witness of the minor prophets and the major prophets, in the midst of teaching that does not reflect Jesus's mission as articulated in Luke chapter 4, enslaved people engage their minds and say they are off, they are wrong, they are theologically incorrect. Now listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to this. Lamentably, white preachers didn't see Jesus as the embodiment of the God who rained fire down on Egypt for their slaveholding in the same way the enslaved did. Somehow, they accepted and espoused the Jesus that condoned slavery in direct contradiction to the attitude Yahweh displayed against Egypt's similar institution. Most white preachers believed that Jesus was Yahweh, but strangely, they didn't apply Yahweh's disdain for slavery to the life and ministry of Jesus. This breakdown of biblical theology didn't go unnoticed by enslaved people. Listen. Now, here is a primary source. Listen to this. It also didn't go unnoticed by one white Methodist preacher who belatedly extolled the theological insight of enslaved people. Now, if you're wondering, this is coming from the second book that I wrote entitled Risks We Must Take. If you want to have this conversation exhaustively, get this book, because I'm just giving you excerpts and snippets. But listen to what this white Methodist minister had to say about the theological prowess of enslaved people. This is what he said. He said, though ignorant of it at the time, he remembers now the cause of the enthusiasm under his deliverance about the law of liberty and freedom from Egyptian bondage. What was figurative, they interpreted literally. He thought of but one ending of the war, they quite another. He remembered the 68th Psalm as affording numerous texts for their delectation, i.e., let God arise, let his enemies be scattered. His march through the wilderness, the chariots of God are 20,000. The hill of God is as the hill of Bashan, and especially, though ye have lain among the pots, ye shall be as the wings of a dove covered with silver, and her father with yellow gold. Listen to this. It is mortifying now to think that his comprehension was not equal to the African intellect. All he thought about was relief from the servitude of sin and freedom from the bondage of the devil. But they, the enslaved, interpreted literally. You know what that's called? That's called being theologically astute. So, how should this impact the way we are doing church? In light of this identity takeaway that we glean from studying the history of the Black church, how are we using this information to do church today? Well, let me answer that question with the question. How are you seeking to enhance the theological knowledge and the theological understanding of your congregants? How are you seeking to help your people to think theologically? How are you seeking to help your people to not just have a dependency upon what the pastor says? Yes, they need to listen to what their pastor says if their pastor is preaching the word of God and being faithful to the scriptures. But how are you helping them to think theologically for themselves? So that if they turn on the TV or they turn on the radio, they're not seduced by theological absurdity. What ministries, what efforts, what events, what programs are you implementing to ensure that your people are able to think theologically effectively? Here's the last one. Then I'm going to open it up for questions. Here's the last one. Then I'm going to open it up for questions. And I kind of alluded to this earlier, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. But the Black church is consciously, culturally expressive. Let me read this. Let me read this. Where's this quote at? I'm gonna find it, y'all. Okay, listen to this. This is Dr. Wayne E. Croft. He writes this. He says, worship in the invisible institution illustrated that traditional African culture was something that could not be disrupted by tragedy. It also provided a space for enslaved Africans to preserve their cultural traditions, as well as resist dehumanization as it pertained to their style of worship. Being consciously, culturally expressive is being intentional about inserting culture into the expression and the worship of the church. Oh, I know that's anathema to conservative people. Ooh, what? Christ above culture. I understand that if you're speaking about culture in the broader sense, if you're using the word culture as synonymous like with the word world or worldliness. Yeah, that doesn't need to enter into the church. But if you're Irish, I ain't got no problem with you. Look, if you want to do the river dance under the unction of the Spirit, do the river dance. All right. If you are Scottish and you want to bring your bagpipes into the gathered worship of the saints, bring your bagpipes. If you are French and you want to do whatever French people do, I don't think there's nothing wrong with it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say something really controversial. I think that honors God. Look, can I read something to you really quick? In Acts, let me try to find it. Hopefully I can find it. Before I say I'm definitely going to read it to you, let me make sure I have the right biblical reference. I think I do. Maybe I don't. Wait, maybe I do. Okay, yes, I'm going to read something to you from Acts 17. Acts 17. Acts 17. Listen to this. I don't think we think about this. Acts 17. And God, verse 26, and God made from one man. Now, this is God. God made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. God made from one man every nation. This is one of the reasons why the picture of worship in the eschaton looks like every nation, tribe, tongue gathered together. Notice in the eschaton, those distinguishing tribal particularities, those languages, those aren't jettisoned. The Apostle John is seeing all of that in the eschaton. Why? Because it honors God for unity to be achieved around diversity. And if God places somebody in Ireland or France or in America, then why shouldn't that be reflected in our worship? We are not black by accident. What we experienced in this country was harsh, it was ugly, it was cruel. And I'm not going to sit up here and say that, that God wanted it. I think we get into some murky existential waters. But what I can say is that the experience of chattel slavery certainly shaped us. And certainly our West African roots shaped us as well. And it's okay to be consciously, culturally expressive. So how do we do church in light of that identity takeaway? Why are you actively trying to suppress your culture, black man, in the church? Why are you trying to make your church look like Elevation Church in blackface? Why? Okay, I know I offended some of y'all. But there you have it. And we're at about an hour and 15 minutes. There you have it. What questions do you have? Let me take a look at these comments. Let me take a look at these comments. Let me take a look at these comments. And again, y'all, I haven't said this. Like, share, subscribe. If you find our conversations to be worthwhile, stimulating, informative, please like, share, and subscribe. Listen, when you talk about having a niche on YouTube, my channel is a super niche. Maybe you can inform me, but I don't think there's any other channel on YouTube like my channel, where I am intentionally and specifically addressing issues pertaining to and relating to the Black church. Now, there are a lot of urban apologetic channels, and I love those. Subscribe to my boy Damon. Subscribe to my boy BK Apologist. Subscribe to my brother Phil Fox. Subscribe to Vocab. Subscribe. But what we're doing here over on Black Church Chats, it is a niche. So I may not ever acquire, 100,000 subscribers, but I do want to acquire as many as I can, because I do think that I am disseminating worthwhile information. JM says the Black community is still here because of the grace of God. That's right. We held on to God's unchanging hand. Facts, and all facts. Let's see. Our moderator, my sister Warrior Woman, is holding it down. JM, I'm with you. JM says this again. I'm tired of certain Christian YouTubers trying to shame Black Christians for having an emotional, expressive worship experience in church. I'm tired of it too. Listen, if you want to be cerebral and stoic and quiet in worship, that's fine. Do it. Have at it. Just don't make that an across-the-board requirement, and please don't suggest that that's how all Black people ought to worship. All right, and also don't try to suggest that type of worship is reflective of Black culture, because it just ain't. All right, what else we got? Let's see. And we got questions. Thank you, JM. JM is holding down. JM is helping the engagement, y'all. Your channel is so necessary and so refreshing. Glory to God. Our wonderful moderator, Warrior Woman, please share on your social media, including on X, to reach a bigger audience. Try hashtag Black Church. I love it. Listen, I don't know about all this SEO stuff. I'm learning about all this, but any help that you guys can give me, please do so. Any questions as we prepare to wrap this up? We've been on for about an hour and 18 minutes. Hopefully it's been insightful. Any questions? I like this comment here by my dear sister, Warrior Woman. She said, suffering has a crucible effect. It molds us and produces gold. Absolutely. All right, so listen, before I sign off, I am going live again tomorrow. I'm trying to go live at least twice a week. So this is the first time. I'll be going live again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And what I'm going to discuss tomorrow, is very personal, near and dear to my heart, something that I actually haven't discussed publicly. I'm going to discuss it tomorrow, and we're going to talk through it. Here's a question from my friend, my brother, Pastor Kwame Crosby. What is the difference between unity and uniformity? That's a great question. What is the difference? So, God wants his church to be united. No question about it. Jesus' high priestly prayer. Jesus says, Lord, make them one as we are one. He prays that to the Father. John 17. Absolutely. However, unity and uniformity are not the same. While God wants, unity, he does not want uniformity. Never was after uniformity. What is uniformity? That's when everybody thinks the same, dresses the same, believes the same. A telltale sign of a cult is uniformity. Jehovah's Witnesses. Used to be that if you wanted to be a baptized publisher within the Jehovah's Witness organization as a male, you had to shave your beard. They've since backed off recently, just recently, they backed off of that policy. But just imagine, in order to join the organization, you have to shave your beard. Just imagine, in order to be a part of this church or to be a part of this organization, women have to always wear dresses, right? Just imagine. So that's uniformity. We talk the same. We think the same. We all believe the same. That is a telltale sign of a cult. Unity, however, is diversity coming together harmoniously. Unity is not when diversity is exterminated and stamped out. Unity is when diversity joins together in harmony. And that's what God is after. He's after unity, not uniformity. So thank you for that question, Reverend. Thank you. I hope I answered that well. All right. Tomorrow, join me. You already knew the answer to that question, Reverend. Tomorrow, join me. 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll be going live again. The topic is, this is the topic. Pastors should never resign and other beliefs that are detrimental to the mental health of Black pastors. That's the topic. And tomorrow, when I go live, I am going to share with you some things that I have never shared publicly. I'm going to be wise. I'm going to edit out the story a little bit, right? I don't want to implicate people, and I don't want to, but I do feel the need to share my story and think through the implications of my story. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. I hope you will join me tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time as we converse again. Till tomorrow. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Bye-bye. Thank you. Warrior Woman says popcorn ready. That's right. Everybody get your popcorn ready. It's going to be good. Grace and peace. Bye-bye.